I don't know if you ever told you this little tale, Michael. Way long ago, when Frank Schwartz hadn't been in town too very long, he had come to town with this red-headed newspaper person from up on the East Coast, and they wound up. She was like the editor of a hazard paper. How in the world she got that job, I have no idea. And Frank wanted to drive down. He's going, let's drive down there, and in Harlan and see, and meet this guy, meet these people. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'd been down there, and I had like doing the Eastern Kentucky, and so off we go. We get down there, and they got a place for us, and they, went, oh no, good, we'll spend the night. That's fine. And we came down there and popped over the creek, walked back into the house because he couldn't drive there. And anyway, this party was going on, and we chatted with a few people, and I was standing on the back porch talking to this big dude, and and he was like, oh, everybody was like, hi, I'm so and so from Johnson County, I'm so and so from Letcher County, and at that time I hadn't run into that before. And so when he introduced himself, with his last name and the county he was from, and just like that, I realized what I had been doing wrong, and it struck me so vividly that I laughed, which was not the right thing to do. I could have easily gotten, and I realized as soon as I laughed, I was like, oh shit, I fucked that up. And, I'm like, no, I'm not talking. I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing at myself. I just made a mistake there. And I really realized, and slid back inside, and he was, oh, he was red. he was not a happy camper. So, that was my first experience in Eastern Kentucky. And, yeah, I'm like, yeah, okay, you better know these people if you're going to go down there and try to get them to do something for you. They probably will. If you want to go down and ask in, friendly way, and they happen to know you and who your mother or your daddy or your brother was, and you need some help, they'll probably help you out. But
I'm hearing that of like respecting pride is what I wrote down, of
what?
understanding what is kind of important, and if that kind of pride is important, then you emulate it, just like in any other empathetic conversation. No, that's good. I like that.
Yeah. Well, that was when I really realized I surely didn't want to be involved in talking about politics with these folks.
Paul, you spent your formative years in Texas.
Yep.
Is the rural urban separation as pronounced in Texas as it is in Kentucky? Do you experience the same thing? Do people from Dallas or Houston or Corpus Christi or any of the larger cities, do they have a hard time relating to the folks from West Texas or from rural areas in Texas? Is it similar?
No, it's different than here. The biggest reason is that here, you can go out and into the state, and just you're isolated. I mean, you're separated from Louisville. You're mid the mountains. It's like there's mountains, and you climb up down, drive up and down the mountains, and that cultural thing is more coherent. All these people who live in and around the mountains are of a set kind, and they've also been more likely a group of people that started out fairly coherently over the whole Irish expats that got out of there to get away from and the Scots to get away from the British. Yeah. And in Texas is divided up into at a minimum 5 different sections for different regions that are, I lived in Northeast Texas, which was more Appalachian. People in East Texas, down around Tyler, where I went to high school, they could hear that difference. And I had a teacher in college who explained that all to us one time. He said, "Yeah, you can hear the difference. The difference. I mean, there's a difference like this. The difference between if you say, would you hand me a pen or pants for some pants? Would you hand me a pen? Depending on where you're from, you would either hand me something to write with, or something to stick into a fabric, PIN. And you'd hear the difference, a pen or a pin. You hear it? A pen or a pen. And that's the cultural thing, that northeastern Appalachian versus what the folks who came down from Tennessee and dropped into around Denison, north and all across the Red River. And then you got the Germans. There are Germans who live in Texas, all right? And they're culturally German, and they speak German, and they have been speaking German for a long time in the central part of town. And I mean, it's faded everything it does because the TV is so pervasive. But yeah, I mean they're German, Texas Germans, and they identify themselves as that. You go to West Texas, and that's like oil company or cattle. Northeast or Western Kentucky and Western Texas is about it leads over into southwestern Texas, which you can get Spanish, and those folks have been here a lot longer than the rest of us. The Spaniards got in here early on.
But among those different sections, is there the same kind of friction that we would find, let's say, between someone from Hazard and someone from Lexington or Louisville?
Not that I really recall that. Mostly there's a difference in what you sound like, but it's so easy. I mean, it's not like if you're out in Hazard someplace, getting to up to Louisville or anywhere up to the center part of town is a chore. You got to ride up and down the hills, and it's a job. And in Texas, most of Texas is flat as a pancake.
Yeah.
And so, you go where you need to go, and then you got these nice highways. They spend a whole lot of time there for building highways.
Yeah.
So they go, get to where they're at.
Now, I do see the difference between the kind of urban rural. One thing that always pops out is there's another difference between Kentucky urban and Chicago urban. I see a big difference where I'm going with this is, as Kentuckians, you can still hear, I'm going to call it condescension.
Condescension.
Thank you. It's not about water. You can still hear it, even though, as a Louisvillian, I consider myself urban, but someone in Chicago, New York, and LA might not, will still hear Kentucky. And then I also noticed, like, the three of us have I'm going to call it a religious appreciation, where you can appreciate some religion I have to very generally say religious ideals and that kind of morality discussions. And so where I'm leading with this is because I think at least the three of us can have some appreciation for, I'm going to be broad sweeping, rural identity, values, and things, and religious, those things.
Yeah.
We can create a connection, find some empathy and some conversational connection with somebody on the other side. Now, my question would be, so for out in Texas, if someone you're disagreeing with politically, what would you grasp? What's the first thing you would grasp onto to find a sort of connection? Like I was talking about I also raise cows, or, I also go to church. Like, what's the first thing in Texas that you would reach out to find a common ground in a conversation?
Well, generally, they ask me what you do.
Yeah.
What kind of job you got?
Who's your team, right?
What? Who's your team? Well, yeah, I mean, that's like secondary level.
No.
It's important. I mean, if you're a Cowboys fan, you're a Cowboys fan, and that, that's where it goes. But it's still mostly about what kind of work do you do?
Is the commonality of I'm labor like you, or like if you said, well, I'm a stock trader, would they be like, okay, well, we're going to stop talking?
No. Well, let's say, like,
how does it help?
What do you do? You trade stocks. Oh, that's interesting. What kind? Where you what's in the market that you like?
It's understanding. It's that appreciation of that person's role, whatever they chose that role to be. So you're showing an appreciation for, this is how you define yourself. Yeah. I'm interested.
Yeah, well, certainly people would expect you, if they perceive you are in roughly the same class as they are, to identify yourself that way and the appropriate job that you have, right? And that's, those are the deals like that. And yeah, and because they're going to move around a lot. That's the thing. I mean, you're talking about, I mean, my family moved, let me see, 4 or 5 times before I left college. And my old man worked for the same company, and it was Cotton Belt Railroad. And so, yeah, you move around. I was fine. I was thinking about this, Dustin, while you were talking. I was thinking about Chicago. I got teased in grade school in northeastern Texas, because of how I said school.
That's the same.
Which I was like, what? And it's a Chicago's way of saying school. At least that's what my mother claimed that, because she grew up in Chicago. And so, I was like, oh, okay, I can hear it. School, rather than school, right? You hear a little bit of it, yeah. So, yeah, that's right, and comes down. So, language, it's funny because language is really super important when people are.
Yeah. I had an experience in Southern Kentucky. This was in the Somerset area. I was with the houseboat company with Waterway Ventures. I was president of the company, and I had employees in that area well, seasonally, I might have as many as 60 people, but through the year, we had about 25. And I like those folks. I like the folks who work for me, but I never quite fit. One, because I was not from that area. I was from Louisville, and they're very suspicious of people from Louisville.
Yep.
And with good reason, because they've been screwed by people from Louisville and from other places for many, many years. And I made the mistake one time when we had visitors on the houseboats. We gave them an orientation before they took the boat out onto the lake. And this orientation was, how the boat operates, some safety factors and things to do and things not to do and so forth. And the guys referred to that as, I'm going to go orientate the people on this boat. Now, I've subsequently learned that is not necessarily a mispronunciation. I said orient. I oriented the people to the boat,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But they used orientated. Now, I observed that when they did that with people from Ohio, which was our biggest customer base, people would come from Ohio down to the Cumberland, that the people from Ohio would kind of snicker under their breath. And this was, this is a hillbilly talk, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I tried to tell the employees that the proper pronunciation is oriented. And I meant no harm. What I was trying to do was keep them from being poked fun at by the people from Ohio. But that caused me more problems than perhaps anything I did, because they thought I was ridiculing them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it was a very difficult thing to navigate. And I realized the way I spoke and the vocabulary I used was more off-putting to them than just about anything else I could do. They didn't mind what I was asking them to do. They didn't mind my management style, but the way I spoke, it sounded like I was talking down at them. Mm-hmm. And I've been thinking more and more about that when we talk about Trump voters, who votes for Trump, generally, I would say, and this is a broad generalization, but the thing that gives impetus to the Trump campaign is people who feel like they've been ridiculed and put upon and made fun of by people who have a different way of speaking and a different way of engaging with other people. They feel like what they do is okay, but these people keep making fun of us. And sometimes it's very overt, in things like the Beverly Hillbillies or
Oh
something
yeah,
like that,
sure.
where you're just taking a stereotype and exploding it. But more often, it's a subtle thing where you separate yourself in a caste that is separate and different from theirs, and you show no respect for their caste, and you assume that they're going to, well, no, wait, we got it. Wait, I'm from Louisville, so obviously I know more than you do. Obviously, I'm smarter than you are. That comes across that way to these folks in a way that I never appreciated before I spent, I spent 2 years down there,
Mhm.
and I got to know, I could see it from their perspective. Began to see it from their point of view. So I think what you're onto with language is a key to understanding the real problem, the underlying problem, which is a lack of respect. I think it all boils down to what you see little children do, little 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds. Somebody's different, everybody laughs. Somebody doesn't have, your shoes are not like ours, ha, ha, ha. We make fun of you because there's something wrong with you because the rest of us have got something you don't have. Or it could be even more cruel, you're ugly or you're fat or you're skinny or whatever the case may be. But I think that's more at the heart of what we're seeing in our political divide than anything else. Now, it's a broad, not everybody not every Republican is of that ilk. But I think the thing that won it for them with Trump was an uprising from those people. It was the Tea Party people, along with a whole lot of people who felt like they've just been put upon. So
Now on the left side, I totally agree with that, but something popped up. On the left side, if I also feel ignored and disrespected,
mhm.
why have I not formed a Tea Party movement and taken over Congress?
Mhm.
When you're describing the way you described what the Trump voters feeling is exactly what at least this Bernie Nader voter has felt.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
what is the big difference there? What are they just doing it in a different style? Are they doing the same thing I'm doing? Like,
Well, you probably can assume a moral superiority.
well, so do they.
I'm of the same ilk, and I don't give any credence to people, moderate Democrats who are just Republican light. It doesn't humiliate me. It simply reinforces, I must be right about this. I'm pissing off the liberals.